Hello, my name is Rachel Hammond, and I'm a doctoral student at Anderson University. The following presentation will cover the results from the study on the impact of student-led instruction versus professor-led instruction on course performance and student perceptions of learning. The presentation will follow this outline, looking first at an introduction, literature review, the methodology of the study, the results, a discussion of those results, and then limitations and future research. The first question is to think about why student presentations. They are a normal part of our business courses, but why do we include them so often? The first reason is that oral communications is considered one of the essential learning outcomes for college students in the 21st century. The skill translates to the workplace. Effective communication skills have been shown to improve hiring, career growth, and employability. In the classroom, for the professor, presentations allow for identification of learning gaps in student understanding. They may need additional coaching and instruction, and that presentation might point that out. From a student's perspective, student presentations lead to greater class interaction, interest in learning, and improvement in presentation skills. Practice makes perfect, right? The student audience also has some benefits. They have the opportunity to practice peer feedback and observation of presentation skills. Modeling is a great learning tool. However, there is a bit of a gap in the research when looking at, do those student presentations impact learning? So I decided to take a closer look. I came up with 2 research questions to delve into. First of all, does the choice of student-led versus professor-led instruction have an impact on student performance as measured by faith and work quiz scores? I wanted to look at the difference between teaching that came from the student versus teaching that came from the professor. And did it have a difference on how well they performed? We'll look at the specifics in just a moment. The second question was, does the choice of student-led versus professor-led instruction have an impact on student beliefs about their level of learning and their perceptions about student presentations as an effective instructional technique? This gets all after their perception. So the first question is about performance. The second question is about perception. There's a bit in the literature about both of these topics. The first is that classroom factors do improve performance. A couple of the elements include student participation. The more that a student participates actively in the classroom, it does lead to better grades and student performance. Also, an active learning approach in the classroom also leads to improved student performance. Classroom factors also impact student perceptions about their learning. Class presentations have been shown to an improved perception of the development of their public speaking skills. Secondly, once again, that active learning has led to the perception that that learning was meaningful. So the literature does say that there are factors in the classroom that lead to improved performance if certain choices are made. But there really wasn't much to say about whether or not student-led instruction versus professor-led instruction made a difference in that level of student performance. So the approach that I took for this study is I took 2 sections of Management 231, a Principles of Management course, and in that course they learn about different faith and work topics throughout the course of the semester. These topics include personal purpose or calling, stewardship, economic justice and business ethics, lifestyle modesty within success with radical generosity, and evangelism. Over the course of the semester, students complete 4 quizzes on those topics. That's the measurement of the learning. I also asked these students to complete a post-course survey to help get after the perceptions about their level of learning and the type of instructional methods that they received. Section 1 received professor-led instruction on these topics, and Section 2 received student-led instruction on the faith and work topics. And as you can see, there was slightly different levels of participation in the survey between Section 1 and Section 2. So what were the results? First, looking at the quiz scores, There was not any statistically significant difference between the quiz scores from the two sections. This was interesting. It did not matter what instructional method was used, they still received an above average score. It was around an 8 out of 10 for both sections. It's possible that there are other factors that led to that quiz score than just the presentation, but it's interesting to note that there wasn't a wide discrepancy between the different presentation styles, having the students present versus having the professor present. Where it got more interesting was looking at the results from the post-course survey. Section 1, they received the professor-led instruction. 92% agreed or strongly agreed that professor-led learning had a positive impact on their learning. However, only 50% agreed or strongly agreed that being required to prepare a presentation would have positively impacted their learning. Students necessarily don't want more assignments, so I suppose that 50% makes sense in the realm of a student answering that question. Section 2, however, received the student-led instruction. 66 agreed or strongly agreed that the student-led instruction had a positive impact on their learning, a bit less. However, 91% agreed or strongly agreed that creating a presentation had a positive impact on their learning. That's interesting. Creating the presentation had a positive impact on their learning. In both sections, the majority of the students felt confident in their understanding of those faith and work topics. So what can we learn? From these results, we can first think about course design. Asking our students to become experts for course presentations is a good idea. The more that we ask our students to delve deeply into topics for presentations, to stimulate critical thinking and develop value-driven perspectives, the more of an impact that those presentations will have on their perception around their learning. Also, when we think about course feedback, there's something to say there too. Just because a student receives an A on an assignment, it doesn't mean that they felt the assignment had a positive impact on their learning. Both sections received similar above average grades on the quizzes that related to faith and work. Most of them did similarly in the class even. But just because they did well, they had different perceptions about how that assignment was administered. In fact, the students that received student-led instruction felt less confident about the impact that those presentations had on their learning. Also, when we're thinking about course feedback, it's important to ask the right questions. Our typical course evaluations get after what they think they learned and the skill development that they might have had, but it doesn't really get after the perceptions of the students on how they thought the assessments benefited their learning or had a positive impact on their learning. And perhaps we should be asking those questions to get a more robust idea of what works and what doesn't. One idea would be to use a hybrid approach, which would be a mix of professor-led and student-led presentations. There was some limitations to this study. It was a small sample size, so it does make it less generalizable. However, there are some ideas for future research. We could expand the study to other business topics, courses, and universities to see if the same results emerge. And also there's some additional student characteristics that we could control for in future studies. So in summary, a couple of points. Despite the lack of difference in learning outcomes between professor-led and student-led instruction, student presentations still matter. They serve as a way for students to dig deeply into topics related to course content, particularly when they are dealing with value-driven topics, and have a positive impact on their learning through creating those presentations. That being said, the process of creating a presentation did have a positive impact on their learning. It also expanded their perspectives on different ways to learn. So they realized that it was a way that they were able to learn about course topics, even though it might not have been something they came into the class thinking that it would do so. Also, results are helpful. I think that this study could be helpful for professors when they are considering course design choices and also developing course feedback instruments. So that's something to think about when deciding what types of assessments to use or asking good questions when trying to get course feedback. Thank you for listening to my presentation about my research study. If you have questions or comments, my email is listed on the screen. Thank you.